Welcome to Pick Up and Deliver, the podcast where I pick up my audio recorder as I head out for a walk, as I step off the train and deliver an episode to you while I walk home. I'm Brendan Riley. That's right, listeners. Summer is over. The school year has begun. Just had my first on-campus event for which I had to ride the train into town, which means that I have my first opportunity to step off the train on my way home and deliver an episode to you while I walk home. Hence, the return to my preferred intro. Well, it is a lovely day here in suburban Chicago. The sun is shining. The sky is a bright blue. Little wisps of white cloud dance across the firmament. And I'm here to talk to you about board games. Two things drove my thinking about this game today. One, I was thinking about Titania Ascending, talking to the company about its slow but inevitable progress toward printing and getting sent, going slower than we'd like, but making its way forward nonetheless. And then last night at Toggle Gaming, I played Three Sisters again. I played that a couple times with my wife, and then I got to play once on my own. That one was pretty good. I realized that I think we played it wrong when we played it before. One of the things you do on your turn, when you take a die, you're taking the die and you do a garden action in the space matching the number of the die, and then you get to do an action based on where the die appears, which of the 6 zones you took the die from, or 7 zones, I guess. And the garden action is either plant or water. When you plant, you can start up to 2 plants by filling in the bottommost box of their little stack. Or when you water, you can advance every plant in that area 1 box. Now, the thing that I had done wrong is that I thought that the plant action was advance 2 plants 1 space. So I thought I didn't realize it was just for starting plants. I thought it was, I was also using it to advance plants, which changes the dynamic quite a bit and makes me think that, in fact, I played it wrong before. So we played it correctly this time, and I got clobbered, 65 to 66 to 82. But a fun time was had by me. But it got me thinking about flip and rights or roll and rights, X and rights, and made me think I want to talk about them a little bit. What better way to do that than to have an episode where I talk about them? Now, the one thing I did not check is, did I already do an episode like this? I don't recall doing one, and I've probably played quite a few since then. So if I did, it was a long time ago. I will look. If you want to know if I did one like this already, check the show notes because I will have posted it there. Greetings, listeners. Future Brendan here. I checked, and in fact I did do a previous episode. It was number 227, Rando-writers. I talked about Yahtzee, Quicks, Welcome to Dino World, Kokoro, Avenue of the Kodama, Imperial Settlers, Roll and Write, and Cartographers. Feel free to go back and listen if you so desire. But what I thought I would do is talk about all the different roll and rights or flip and rights that I can remember that I've played, which is quite a few. And then I would tell you about the sort of different types and what I like about each of those types. So, as far as I can remember, I've played 21 different roll and rights or flip and rights, including Titania Ascending, which none of you have played unless you had a chance to demo it, which is precious few people. But for the most part, but all the other games are commercially published games that I've played. And so I'm looking forward to talking about them. All right, so what I'll do is I'll name what I think of as the exemplary game in that category, and then talk about some other games that also fit that category that I've played. 22, I just remembered another one. All right, so the first one, the first type I want to talk about is Quicks. Quicks is a fairly simple roll and write where each person has a little sheet that you're filling out. And on the active player's turn, they are going to roll dice, and then you get to use the pair of white dice that they've rolled to fill in a box on your sheet. Quicks has a couple of advantages. It's pretty short. Everybody gets to go with each roll, although the active player gets extra stuff, which is fun. And it doesn't outlast its welcome. There's also a heavy degree of luck, so newcomers can do well but skill does usually win the day. If you've played a few times before or you're really thoughtful about it, you can usually leverage some strategy to win, but not always. Other games that I would say are kind of like Quicks, we've got Rolled West, which is a bit more complicated. You have a little player board, but you are using the role that someone else did. And perhaps Floor Plan. Yep, Floor Plan is the one where you're building a house. And let's say Railroad Inc. That one you're using the dice that other people rolled to do stuff. Mostly checking off boxes here and there, and some of those will compound to get you points. The next game I want to call out as being particularly special is Cartographers. Cartographers is of course a shape drawing game in which you are filling in a map, trying to meet 4 different scoring conditions, and when those scoring conditions trigger, you get the points for how well you've met those conditions. Now everybody's filling in the same thing in Cartographers, so you're using a narrower choice set, but you have a choice of where you're going to put the thing that you've filled in. So in terms of shapes, Cartographers reminds me a lot of Patchwork Doodle, which also involves drawing in shapes, and I guess a little bit Welcome to Dino World, which involves drawing shapes as well. So those 3 sort of overlap a bit as you're going along. My next game to call out as being really good is Welcome To. And Welcome To, of course, you're planning a neighborhood. This is a game that's already gotten a lot of coverage here on the podcast. There's 2 cards that flip, and then you get a choice about how to use the pair of cards that come out in a variety of different ways. That pairing reminds me of Titania Ascending. That's very similar to the system we had there. In some ways, that pairing also ends up showing up in Riverside a little bit, or maybe Ganshan Clever, although Ganshan Clever is dice, not cards. But the key thing in all of these is that you have several different choices about which thing you're going to use, and then you use that to trigger what you're going to do. So yeah, we'll say Welcome to, Riverside, and Ganshan Clever are all very similar. Next up, I want to call out a game that is about drawing a path. This is my favorite of the path drawing games. This is Trails of Tucana. Trails of Tucana is a roll and write in which you are, there are a bunch of different terrain types, and you have a map full of different terrain. And on each turn, we're going to flip over a couple cards, and you have to draw a line somewhere on your map from the first terrain to the second. And after you've gone through the whole deck, then you score, and then you go through the whole deck again and score, go through the whole deck a third time and you score. As you're drawing these lines, what you're trying to do is connect the villages to other villages and to various monuments that are scattered around the map that will earn you points for connecting to them. It's a remarkably flexible game, sometimes infuriating because the thing you really wanted doesn't come up, and it takes a lot of planning. I really like Trails of Tucana. Another game that feels a lot like that is Avenue of the Kodama. That one also has the dice that you roll and has the cards that come out and then has you drawing a path. That one's even more brutal in terms of how you're planning it. And generally I found that people find Avenue much less fun than Trails of Tucana. We get done with Avenue and people are like, oh, that game was hard. Or they say, oh, I didn't like that game. Trails of Tucana, they say, ooh, that was a good one. That was fun. The distinction between these 2 different types of roll and writes is pretty interesting, I think. Both involve drawing a path based on the cards that come out. But Trails of Tucana just has a little bit more flexibility. It's a little bit more fun. Trails of Tucana also has cascading bonuses, which is something I haven't mentioned yet. Cascading bonuses do appear in a variety of these different games. I mentioned Riverside earlier. That one has them. But that leads me to my next and final game that I want to call out as a really compelling roll and write, and that's Three Sisters. Three Sisters is, of course, the gardening game that I mentioned earlier. On your turn, you're going to draft a die, use it to plant or water your garden, and then use the spot you got it from to do an action. And then on your second turn, and then after everyone's taken one die, the lowest number die that remains will also be used by everybody to do another plant and another action. So there's an interesting push-pull where if you're early in your drafting, you might take one of the higher number dice because you think it's probably likely that one of the lower dice will still be left there. But if everybody takes the higher die, or if somebody takes that lower die, then you might not get what you were planning for. It's an interesting conundrum. It turns out that this time of night that I'm walking home right now is prime dog walking time. There's dogs everywhere. So that's but Three Sisters, like I said, involves this gardening, but what makes it really compelling is that it's very combo-tastic. So there's a lot of spaces on the Three Sisters board where when you fill them in, you then get to do something else. And often that something else will get you something else to do. And that cascades in a really interesting way, which can result in you taking several actions on your turn instead of just the 2 that the game gives you. Now, Three Sisters reminds me most of Fleet Dice and a little bit of Riverside. Riverside has that stuff as well. So those are my 5 favorite roll and writes, I think. Cartographers, Quicks, Welcome to, Trails of Tucana, and Three Sisters. All games that have gotten a fair amount of mention here. I've mentioned a variety of other games as well. There will be links in the show notes to those games if you want to check them out. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 roll and writes that I have played, but I did not mention yet. So I'm going to buzz through those really quick. And of course, Titania Ascending, soon to be sent to you through the mail from a Kickstarter, and/or available for pre-order sometime soon. But the roll and writes I haven't mentioned. Silver and Gold is a card game from Phil Walker Harding. Has an interesting element where you are filling in boxes on cards themselves, and you score the cards, then you draw another card. I confess I don't remember anything more than that. We played it once. I thought it was fine. We still have it, but I don't remember exactly how it works. Lanterns Dice, I also enjoyed. I also don't remember it very well at all, and I played that even longer ago. So Lanterns Dice sits in the zone of games I've played, but I don't remember well enough to talk about them. Long Shot the Dice game, I'm just going to say it was interesting, and look forward to the next Shooting from the Hip episode because I played it for the first time recently. So I'm going to talk about it then, not now. Yahtzee I mentioned earlier, but that one has 3 rolls, and then you mark off stuff on your box, on your board. The marking off stuff part reminds me a little bit of Fleet the Dice game, except there's no combos in Yahtzee. It's actually a constricting game. So in that way, it's sort of like Railroad Inc. As you're marking things, you're making it harder on yourself in the future, even as you try to score points. All right, the last 2. Another route building game that I have is Explorers. This is the print and play roll and write that was designed by Matthew Dunstan and another co-designer, but not Brett Gilbert. And Postmark Games was the company. Future Brendan here again, just to let you know that I misspoke. The name of that game is Voyages, not Explorers. So it's Voyages. And so that's a roll and write that you can print out yourself. I think it's $5 to get the downloads. Worth checking out. Now, in that one, you're sailing a ship. There's an interesting mechanism by which you roll 2 dice. One of the dice determines how far you move. Or there's 3 dice. One of the dice determines how far you move. One of the dice determines what direction you move. And one of the dice lets you take an action on your ship. You get to pick how you're going to distribute those dice. Wall, of course, is another combo-tastic mega. And then finally, the last, other than Titania Ascending, the last one I want to mention. I did play a couple of times. Should I try? Settlers I didn't even mention Gone Shot. Clever. At some point I marked it off. More robust roll and write. I guess I could have put an umbrella over. That's pretty clever. Genre. And double clever. Where you would get bonuses for having different things filled in. So you that all 3 of those games I think are sort of filled in quickly. One game. Yeah. So what game? What are your favorite roll and writes? Have you played any of the ones I just mentioned? Which ones do you like best and why? Head over to Board Game Geek Guild 3269. Share your thoughts on those, as well as any other games you've been playing lately. Until next time, thanks for joining me. I hope that your next walk is as pleasant as mine was. Bye-bye. Come on. I'm waiting for traffic and it's like the cars are precisely timed to make it hard to cross.
Brought to you by Rattlebox Games.